Hello, this is Zach, and with me here is Jack.
Hello, Jack. This is...
Damn it! You're Jack, you idiot! Fuck! Alright. Ignoring that, we've already restarted once.
We can't do it again.
We can't do it again. We're just gonna go. Today we're gonna be talking about sort of the world building, so deep, of this little game we've been working on. It's a homebrew based off of,
a 4th edition.
Yeah, 4th edition?
Yeah, I based it off of 4th edition,
Really?
actually.
Oh, well that explains some of it. Based off the 4th edition of Dungeons & Dragons, we're calling it right now Swords and Saddles.
It might need some work on the title, but, you know, it's work in progress and all that. Actually, the way we started making this is that I had made another homebrew game for Shadowrun. I made homebrew Shadowrun.
Yes.
Zach was a part of my first game making that. I had actually played D&D only once prior.
Oh, really?
Before playing the game. Well, in one campaign with one group.
Really? Huh.
Pretty much, yeah.
I sort of assumed you had done it a lot before.
I'd read on it and all sorts of stuff, but that only done it once.
Alright.
And so after we played that for a while and it kind of came crashing down.
Oh boy.
For reasons.
That's a story for another time.
Complete other time. Zach actually contacted me over the summer, and he asked me to make a game for him. He wanted a sort of Western-style game, but with magic, and we first started discussing like how the system would work. And I had been recently reading up on this thing called Dark Sun, which is another D&D setting.
Is it D&D?
Yeah, I think Dark Sun's D&D. It's
Yeah.
a D&D setting.
There are a lot of things I just don't know about this whole setup.
Yeah, and so I was interested in the low magic of Dark Sun, because that's one of the big sort of things about it, is that magic left. So I was fascinated with this, and since Zach gave me this opportunity, I wanted to discuss lore with him, because he's a pretty smart guy, and he reads a fuck ton more fantasy novels than me.
Yeah, my bookshelf is a cheap plastic, like not even Target brand, like really off-brand, just cheap plastic. The thing is falling apart. It has so many, you know, most of them are pretty awful books, but I feel obligated to read all of them anyway. Because, like, I can't get a book and then not finish it. You know?
That's just an insult.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, somebody worked hard on that. Also, I apologize. I'm in the middle of eating a cookie right now.
Worked hard.
Yes. Well, for some of them, yes, and I feel bad. But, anyway. So, the idea for Swords and Saddles was basically Fallout meets Elder Scrolls, in a way.
Yeah.
That was my elevator pitch.
And I think it actually kind of worked out, because I was both sucked up in my own sort of reading the different sort of things and interested in, like, how can I make magic work? What kind of weapons can I have? I'm just insane about that, and Zach is more like a focusing mind for all this.
Well, the short version of the magic, which we may expand on later, but the short version is the gods died, so there are no divine powers. Just sort of what you get on the Earth-like planet is what you get.
Yeah, nature spirits and junk like that.
So no real maybe a few demigods, but they'd be physical things that could still die, if at all.
Actually, that's an idea I got going. I want to talk to you about.
All right.
But before I get to that, how the gods died and how the setting sort of came to be is that the elves,
being the jerkbags that they are,
the filthy elves, got together with the College of Wizards in this world that was just like a basic run-of-the-mill fantasy world. And like, listen, we only have a certain amount of magic in this world because the arcane realm bleeds into it. Why don't we open the wound bigger and pour more of the arcane realm into here, increasing our power?
And as you can imagine, that did not work out very well.
Yeah, it kind of went off like a nuke.
Yeah.
Like a natural wand-waving magic, shut down, got replaced with, you had to hold a crystal.
Yes.
Crystal is the instigator for magic.
Called arcane shards.
Yeah, I think that was a good name.
In a way, it did work. There is technically more magic in that everyone can use magic, but it's like nobody has a reserve where they can, prepare spells. You kind of have to have these little shards of mana, I guess it would be.
Yeah.
And when you break them or absorb them, it's not really clear yet, but you use them. And so that's inventory management. You got to like, ooh, I can cast a spell, but that's like $50 if I use it right there.
Yeah. I was interested in inventory management when we were doing this. And what else happened? Oh yeah, the sun grew enormous.
Mm-hmm. Baked the whole world.
Baked the whole world. And the elves lost their immortality.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of shows my own racism towards the elves, so, working out some issues.
Just working through some things right now, But, no, so it's nice, It kind of has a couple stereotypes in it, like the elves being the super magic people, magicians and such, and wizards being ambitious, the dwarves being super Semitic. That's another fun thing.
Yeah. The dwarves kind of rose in this world because, one, they get to say, we were right, eat it.
Yeah.
And two, all their gear and armor and weapons and everything that's useful is just metal.
Yes. And they lived underground, which is sort of part of the Fallout part. I mean, specifically Fallout, like 1 and 2 and New Vegas, the whole Western theme. Mm-hmm. Mostly New Vegas, I think, has the Western.
Oh, yeah. I was hard into New Vegas when I actually wrote this in Nicaragua.
Yes, Nicaragua. Interesting story, that.
Yeah.
In the dirt pits of an archaeological dig.
I didn't get into actually writing out all, like, the classes and stuff like that, because, everything gets in the way and you get lazy, until I went on an archaeological trip to Nicaragua with my school. I was in college by this time, so I'm just there, bored out of my mind on quite a few occasions, so I'm just like, I'm gonna write an entire game. Spent the entire 30 days I was there writing out the different character classes, different character things, got really poetic, and then I tested it with some of the other archaeological students. Some of the results were actually pretty interesting.
Yeah.
One of the guys, he talked like Monsieur Candy from Django Unchained.
Yeah. There's because his southern accent it's kind of easy thing to slip into from time to time.
I know.
From the few test games we've run, people really like doing that. Really getting into character here, where you gotta speak like your character would, as a fine southern gentleman.
Yeah. So far, how many classes do we have?
Well, let's go down the list. I really should just have the rules open on my computer here, but we have...
I can remember them, I think.
So we have the Gunslinger,
Mm-hmm.
who... Do you have to scratch your neck now, Chip? Sorry, there are dogs in the room. You can't really get rid of them. There's the Gunslinger, whose sort of special thing is, of course, gunslinging. That means... they can draw and holster their weapons as a free action. They don't need to, spend time doing it.
They can do that sort of like unload the entire gun by just like smacking the thing 6 times.
Yeah, they have their magic special ability that only gunslingers can use. Is it that, or is it just a spell they have where they refill their ammo?
That's only Gunslinger. That's the Gunslinger one.
So the Gunslinger's thing is that they just refill their entire chamber.
With bullets. Just spend magic, more bullets.
Yes.
No need to reload.
Yeah. So it's that's what, 1 or 2 shards to get that?
I think it's 2 shards.
Yeah. So that's, at the current rate, that's about $50, which is more than bullets, but
I changed it to 15.
15 instead
15
of 20?
per shard.
All right. That's still a fair amount of money,
yeah.
I think. People were hesitant to use their shards because they were kind of pricey, so lowering the price or increasing all the damage stuff, obviously we want to lower the price of the two.
Yeah. With gunslingers, they are specialized in dexterity, and in this setting, AC isn't counted by like strength or constitution, it's dexterity, how you can dodge things.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and that's the other thing, is that because it's a Western, everybody has guns, so...
Yeah, that's actually kind of a funny thing, because like everybody can use a certain magic spells that are common spells you can learn. But one of the common spells is Fireball, and it does the same amount of damage as a 6-shooter, and it costs more.
Yeah,
just to show that it's useless now.
I think maybe it could do, like, a little more damage.
What if we just did ongoing burning damage?
Yeah, because we do have, another thing is that you can spend crystals to sort of coat your bullets in a different...
element.
Yeah, so I guess we could just apply the same burning damage from the fire bullet.
Mm-hmm. We probably should do that with it, although I do like the fact that...
It's redundant.
Yeah, it's become redundant. People like, we found gunpowder, we don't need magic.
Nah.
The second class is the Lawman, which is sort of like the Rooster Cogburn type of guy. The Justice.
Yeah, so the Gunslinger also, just a quick
yeah.
note, the Gunslinger doesn't need to use a revolver. They're quick with any gun, but...
They can only use guns.
Yeah, so they're not allowed to... Well, it's not that they're not allowed to, but they really suck at fighting if they're given, like, a knife or a stick of dynamite or something. They're just awful.
Yeah, they're not built for it.
They could dodge hits from a punchy guy, but without a gun, they're pretty much at a huge disadvantage. Anyway, moving on, the Lawman.
Yeah, the Lawman is kind of the justice thing. In lore, in my head, is like after the gods disappeared, the paladins have no real sort of reason to exist. So they just kind of conglom together and built a cult to law and order, to just justice itself. They don't need a god for it.
Which, that's the first time I've heard about it. I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. They use rifles, usually.
They can use any sort of weapon, but they do mainly sort of prefer rifles.
Maybe a shotgun, but mostly rifles.
They're the way they specialize is that they are really good at long range. They're the most accurate sort of the classes.
In fact, one of their spells, which is not their class spell, is one of the spells they can learn is called Eagle Eye,
which enhances their perception.
Yeah, which at long ranges, changing perception increases your accuracy.
Yeah,
which makes sense if you're using a gun.
Yeah, they're the killing. They're pretty much they are the Judge Dredd of this universe.
Judge, jury, and execution. Well, when you don't really have a centralized government, it's hard to have actual trials.
Well, there are centralized governments in the world. It's just these guys are just don't subscribe to any of them.
Yeah. Sometimes they'll become the sheriff of a town just because...
That's easier.
I mean, yeah. But the lawman itself is not, like, actual the law. It's more sort of a general term for, dudes.
It's kind of like the marshal, like Texas, U.S. Marshals.
Yeah, they just sort of go around and fighting crime in the Wild West.
Yeah, although it could be very easy to make a lawman the villain of any campaign you're doing, because law can just be like the tyrannical rule, like you do what I say or you're dead.
Well, if I remember correctly, they're not allowed to be... They don't have to be lawful anything, but they're not allowed to be chaotic. Was that it?
The rule was they can be any non-chaotic.
Yeah, so they can be evil. They just can't be chaotic.
Yeah, they still... Although if you're trying to do something interesting, I think you could do, like... If it's a lawman who is technically evil, you could just have a guy who fully believes what he does is right.
Yeah, exactly. Justification... everyone's the hero in their own story, so...
Yeah. Okay, third class. Shamans.
Yes, and they, in my opinion, are the most interesting class at the moment, just because of the lore behind them. Like gunslingers, those are really fast guys. Lawmen, they're the law. But shaman are pretty unique in this setting, because instead of needing shards, they sort of can create life, in the wasteland, which when they meditate for a half hour, they get the equivalent of 3 shards worth of magic stored inside them, which after 2 days sort of fades away back into nature.
Yeah.
But when they're meditating, grass will sprout up on the ground, and
trees will regrow.
So the shaman, unfortunately, because they have natural magic, are sort of shunned by societies.
Yeah, they're a bit angry after the whole world got nuked, every god I prayed to is dead, sun's burning.
These guys still have magic. Come on.
Yeah, as far as lore goes, these guys are definitely the most interesting.
Including their home city, I think, is again, the most interesting city that we've written up so far.
Yeah, their home city of Oasis.
Or the Oasis.
It is
There are still oases. Oases.
Yes.
There's still plenty of them out in the wasteland area, but the Oasis is...
It's like this spot in the middle of the desert that has waterfalls, trees. It's good. The magical sort of fallout is not really there. We'll get on that later. But according to lore...
It's basically... Oh, keynote, one of the shaman's other powers is that they can summon basically a duplicate of themselves.
They can summon elementals and build golems.
Yes.
And golems are duplicates.
Yes. The golem is, you know, in terms of stats, is exactly the same except for a slight health boost.
Yeah, it's a slight health boost and knows their spells.
Yes. The face of the golem, you know, looks like a sculpture of the caster. But the thing about Oasis is that there's a giant golem of unknown origin with a very worn-out looking, you know, indistinct face, and it's just constantly meditating, sort of in the center of all this green.
And that's how it all gets green, because he's just, like, constantly doing the create life spell just again and again, which kind of has built up power in him.
Yeah. And, do we want to talk about the somewhat weird things we came up with recently about Oasis? Or do we want to save that for later?
I think maybe we should save some of, like, the secrets or the backstories for later.
Yeah. Well, suffice to say that Oasis is not simply a happy, you know, peaceful... I mean, it is peaceful. The shaman also are pretty much immune to bluff and, you know, illusions and stuff. Mm-hmm. So they run a very strict camp of, you know, no fighting, no, you know, nothing other than a knife when you're, you know, going around. Like, you can have your weapon, you just can't use it for anything.
Yeah. Because this is paradise. You don't mess with paradise. And they won't, like, directly kill you. They'll just, like, shoot. They'll either make you leave or they'll mulch you.
Yes.
Like, you become part of the earth.
Yes. It's kind of messed up, but we'll talk about that at a later date.
Yeah.
So the shaman, their thing is summoning and some healing, but not a whole lot.
Yeah. They're mainly sort of like the magical source here.
Yes.
And what else about them? Oh yeah, their teeth are messed up.
Yes, that's a key thing, is that shaman, by default, have really messed up teeth. You know, Oasis does not have a good dentist. And there's some spookiness behind that.
That we could go into later.
Yes, maybe later, but
yeah.
Next class.
Next class is the Swindler.
Yes, and the Swindler is your classic rogue, but with the Wild West twist of sort of like the Duke and the King in Huckleberry Finn. Mm-hmm. They just sort of, you know, go from place to place. They don't necessarily have money, but they may seem like they do.
Like any sort of like tonic salesman from like an Old West, like selling their snake oil, junk like that, like.
Which is really just a lot of drugs all in one bottle.
Pretty much, like, they're like, behold, this can give you magic powers again. And it just, like, knocks a guy out, then you rob him. Yeah. Swindlers are just, that's the fun class, I think.
Yeah, it takes a little more role-playing, though. Similar to the shaman, swindlers aren't exactly, you know, smiled upon in civilized company.
But you wouldn't know that a person's a swindler unless they told you.
Shoot, I forgot. What was the Swindler's class action?
Their class attack is they can backstab.
Oh,
like
right.
a classical thief. They know how to just take someone out from behind. And they don't even need knives. If they have a gun and they're right behind a guy, just...
You know, they can, there's another thing that might be a little OP. The way that the skill system works is
you might want to check to see if we're still recording.
Yes, we should still be recording.
Awesome.
Yes. I'm just pulling up the rule set because I can't remember some of the specifics. One of the things that the skills do is instead of having feats, skills, and, you know, a bunch of stuff like that, it's you have your class things and then you have skills.
You also have class spells.
Yes. So when you level up, which should be fairly frequent with the way that the rules are written, you get to pick one skill, or you can sort of upgrade a skill that you already have. And so one of the skills makes it so that you can try to hide.
Yeah.
And then the sort of upgraded version of it is that you can try to hide in combat and just sort of suddenly, oh, he's not here anymore.
Yeah. Like, you can, say you're in a bar, like, combat starts, everyone starts shooting, and as soon as, like, smoke goes, you just jump over the bar and hide behind it.
Yeah.
That's you.
Yeah. And that's only usable by the Swindler and the Shaman.
Yeah. The two sneaky classes.
Sneaky.
Sneaky shaman.
Yeah. And then the final completely written class,
which is my favorite,
is the Pit Fighter.
Yeah.
Which I wanted to call the Pugilist, but seeing as they don't only use their fists, it's not really appropriate.
With our last half-written class, we could probably switch that up. But the Pit Fighter is the melee specialist in this world.
And they're also sort of like a barbarian, where their special thing is getting not. I guess it would be enraged, where you know, they do extra damage and stuff like that for a brief amount of time.
Yeah, they're the ones that jump in close and just hammer into the person quickly.
Yeah. Also, they have my favorite named class spell, Oil Up.
Yeah.
Which, all it does is give you +1 for AC, which lets you sort of dodge things better. The idea being that you're really up close and personal with the Pit Fighter, because their other thing is that they can run faster than other people.
Yeah.
And it's just, Oil Up is just a fun name.
Yeah, actually in my first game, some guy did something really crazy with that. He specialized in fist combat, because they're barbarians. They beat people to death. And what Oil Up does is essentially covers you in fighting oil. Which, like...
It just gets you into this sort of Turkish wrestling mode, where you're just oiled up in your underwear trying to grab the other dude's crotch before he can grab yours. It's...
Yeah. It's kind of like that. And I thought it would be interesting, because old, like, pugilists back in that time actually did, like, coat themselves in oil to be able to fight.
No, I mean, it's a thing that happened, but it's just... I love the concept of, you know, this gritty Wild West, and there's just a dude, like, just shiny with oil, and he's just like, right, boys, let's get to fighting.
Which is why I like this class.
You know, everybody is, you know, they're like a mile away, you can see him coming, this dude's just standing there with a bottle, just pouring it all over himself, you know, flicking his hair back, and...
He's just shining.
Well, great. Now they know where they are, because, you know, Ron over here is, like, shining like a beacon.
The fires are lit. Gondor calls for aid.
Yeah, it's kind of ridiculous, but it does give you a nice benefit.
Some guy actually came up with a pretty clever thing in my first campaign. He was playing a pit fighter who he said, I want her to look like Kathy Bates. And I go, why? I said, I want her to look like Kathy Bates. I'm like, okay. So he's got a pit fighter that looks like Kathy Bates, and he goes into the fight, and he's like, okay, I oil up. He oiled up, and I'm like, okay, there, you have an oiled up Kathy Bates. And I'm going to cast fire coating, looking up Kathy Bates.
It's just such a stupid concept. Anyway.
And he's like, okay, I'm oiled up. I'm like, alright. And I'm going to cast fire coating on my fists. I'm like, what? He's like, well, since there's oil, and oil can ignite, and I coat him with fire, I now have flaming fists. I'm like, I can't fault your logic. Go with it.
You know, this may backfire on you in the end. You know, if he took one of the other pit fighter spells, Magic Eater, you're immune to magic, which means magic fire probably wouldn't hurt him.
Yeah.
So there you go, loophole created.
You can... That's the thing I'm trying to do with this beta test, people to test and try to break it.
Yes.
Because the more they break it, the more interesting things I can get.
Yeah. So it's fun.
Yeah, Pit Fighter's main melee specialists, again, not much in the way of lore backstory like the shamans, but we're working on it.
Yeah, it has a pretty generic description at the moment. Mm-hmm. Now, the final class, which, as we said earlier, is little unfinished. You know, it's kind of done is
We're working on it.
we realized that the shaman wasn't really great at healing. They had 2 spells which essentially did the same thing. One healed the body, one healed the mind. But we sort of realized that the mind one was not useless, but not nearly used as often, and like they cost the same to cast. So we just sort of combined them, and there's now the Surgeon Barber as our healer.
Yeah. I do like the description.
Yes. Back before the Wasteland, most people mocked non-magical healing. Who needs stitches if you can just magic tissue back together? Who needs disinfectant if you can arcane away the infection? Who needs a splint if I can set my bones with powers from the beyond? Well, now that magic's harder to come by, you need all these things. The surgeon is the man who can fix you with or without arcane shards, and give you a haircut in the process.
Yeah, the surgeon's he's the doctor. The doctor who's been mocked and derided and called insane before the waste.
But now, look who's laughing.
Yeah, he is. He's knee-deep in people.
So the Surgeon Barber, at the moment, they're sort of... The reason that they'd help the pit fighter maybe become the pugilist is that they're not allowed to have anything other than melee weapons as well. Mm-hmm. Because, you know, Hippocratic Oath and all that, they're not supposed to hurt people, so all they carry is surgical tools, which, you know, includes quite a few knives, maybe a hammer for working on things, but more improvised weaponry than...
Yeah, if they kill somebody with, like, a surgical tool... Ooh, dude! Funny lore idea.
Oh boy.
They still have, like, the Hippocratic Oath sort of things, like, you can't kill people. But if they kill people with, like, surgical tools, they'll just say, oh, it's botched surgery.
Oh, you know.
When someone's dead, they're stabbing, they're like,
sorry for this invasive surgery, man, but, you know, you broke into my house. So now I just gotta accidentally slit your arteries.
It's like, man, I was trying the most dangerous surgery of all. What's that? Make him no longer a dick. Didn't work. He died on the table. That could be pretty funny.
Yeah. But, so yeah, their thing is that,
they're like the knife juggling kind of precise hand sort of fighters, if anything.
Their main stat is dexterity, but they also use intelligence and perception. They're not necessarily wise. You'd want to have wisdom, but generally speaking, it's their job just, you know, stitch people up and give them a shave.
It doesn't matter if they're socially awkward or not, because that doesn't play into it at all. I'm dying, man. There's a bullet in me.
Can you just come back later? I'm doing things. I don't want to talk to people today. But, sir, he's been shot. I'm just. Oh, okay.
100% autism.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, so if you wanted to play a Surgeon Barber, you could play it like that.
Yeah, so, you know, that was just sort of a look into the classes. Mm-hmm. There's more to it. Obviously, it's not just a series of classes. A little bit of the lore. You know, we got...
Should we hit monsters?
I say let's talk about races first.
Okay. The only race you can play is human so far.
So far. Mainly because, as we said before, the elves kind of all became mortal, and... Oh, that's another thing. Just like how Oasis is a nice, big, happy place with, you know, life, there is another place, which may or may not exist, which is a big old haunted forest.
It's called the Dead Forest.
Very creatively named, but it's because basically any living thing in there is haunted by or possessed by a dead elf.
Yeah, even non-living things.
Yeah, so there's like, oh man, this bush is looking at me funny. Oh, that's just Allendwell. You know, he's still bitter that he wound up with a bush.
I mean, other guys got skeletons, even their own skeletons and sets of armor. Allendwell, bush.
Yeah. You know, there's a zombie bear with, you know, reading books the size of bare hands.
Yeah. It's kind of that sort of level of messed... This area is the exact opposite of the Oasis. It is messed up.
Yeah, it's a
It's where nuclear fallout happened, except magic.
Yeah, it's ground zero. So, in a way, it did work. The elves got more magic into the world, and, they became one with nature in the worst way possible, which is, haunting nature.
Like, plastered to it with super glue.
Yeah. So,
I was kind of mean with what I did to the elves beyond just that.
It's fitting. The elves can be kind of snooty in most settings, so, turn that on their head, and they're the ones responsible for most of the world's problems. And it's not just the suspicions of a Nord. This is, actual they messed up.
They did it. It's their fault.
Yes.
It's not the dead forest and them, like, possessing things that is the messed up thing, in my opinion. The other things that happened to the elves is after they lost their immortality, they still live a long time, but the age hits them. Like, they grow old, they grow wrinkled, they are out of magic, and so they've essentially become, how do I put this, magical cocaine addicts.
Ooh, yes, I forgot about that.
You see, a thing you can do with the shards is you can ground it up into powder.
So long as you don't intend to use it at the moment. If you try to crush it otherwise, it typically will activate.
You have to be, like, intending to cast a spell when you crush it. But if you ground it up without the intention of casting a spell right then and there, and you snort it, you can regain some of, like, your old magic or enhance a certain magical spell you have. Like, there's this gang called the Krelos, who are barbarians who've been snorting that constantly to boost their rage powers.
They ride Gila monsters.
Yeah, giant Gila monsters, which I think, that would work.
Yeah, it's the desert, man. You don't know what's out there.
Yeah, and the elves have been doing that just to, like, feel immortal again, just to glimpse that.
Yeah. So you can tell how addicted they are based on how youthful they look.
Yeah. And, I gotta write something for how, like, withdrawal goes.
Yeah.
That's gonna be brutal. It's gonna, like, hyper-reverse, and they're gonna age and turn to that guy from the end of, Last Crusade.
Just fall apart, grow old, hair just shoots out of your head, turns white, and you die.
Turn to dust. I'm like, oh, man. Maybe I got anger issues against the elves.
Maybe.
But, so, the elves fucked up. They live in that sort of area, usually. And what was the other elves? You thought of this because you were fighting the synths.
Yes, I was playing Fallout 4, and seeing as the sort of concept for this idea comes from Fallout New Vegas, in Fallout 4 there are the synths, synthetic humans. And so the idea here is there's roving sort of elves, but instead of being elves at this point, they're more machine than man now.
Yeah, like they pick up any sort of thing and replace their body with it if they can.
Or just, like, in that really creepy movie, The Dark Crystal, there's the puppets walking around with, like, just a mountain of trash on their back. Because it could be valuable at some point. So it's sort of like that, where they just build up on themselves, and maybe it's not even part of them, it's just a machine they move around in that they can't really leave at this point because they didn't build a way to escape.
Yeah. Just, like, seeking anything they can to, like, keep their bodies going, to keep on to the illusion of immortality.
Yeah, so that's sort of a combination, ironically enough, of the synths and the Brotherhood of Steel. It's just, collect all things from before the war, or in Fallout, of course, it's the war. Here, it would be before the elves.
Yeah, before they fucked it up.
Yes, so it would be collect all things from the before times, and
like magical items from the past would still function.
Yeah, so that would be another thing, is that, ooh, he has a magical item. Oh, he's rich.
Oh, let's kill him and take it.
Yeah, so, even a ring of light,
like,
that alone is enough to drive people to murder.
A bag of holding. The elves would, like, siege an entire town for a bag of holding.
Yeah. So, very, very, very rare. Yeah. But still usable.
What about the dwarves?
Yes, the dwarves. So, the dwarf society, as of yet, is not very well fleshed out. We had some ideas. I'm not sure if they'd work. But
I want to go with that idea you were talking about.
So, the short version of the dwarves is somewhat racist caricature of the Jewish peoples. And that's not entirely on purpose. It started off based off Tolkien's dwarves, because of course everything is. And, Tolkien's dwarves, they're pretty Semitic. They got...
I mean, Tolkien admitted.
Oh, yeah. Their language is very... not harsh? I guess it's kind of harsh, but it sounds more Semitic than, like Elvish and English do. So,
although
searching
Tolkien
for
loved the dwarves, so why not?
Searching for their homeland.
They rip out their beards at funerals.
Yeah. But anyway, so the idea behind the dwarves is that they were locked underground, and initially they thought, oh, this whole thing, it's no big deal, it's just some, human war on the surface, and then they come up and it's like, what happened? We left you guys alone for 5 minutes and you destroyed the world. We called it, the elves suck, also we have a lot of money and supplies, so we're gonna run a bank now.
Yeah, they had the money to help to, sort things out. They had the resources. They had the metal. They had every single thing that is practical.
Yeah, so, they don't all run a bank. It's just that in the starting town, there's a dwarven banker.
Yeah.
And there was a one-shot that you wrote where you're escorting a dwarven caravan for the census.
Yeah.
Which is totally not, Jesus or anything.
It was a Christmas-based thing.
It was a Christmas episode of Swords and Saddles.
Yeah.
So the dwarves, very practical in this setting.
Yeah, and what was... Oh, yeah, the other thing you're talking about. So, they essentially live in a monocracy. It's money.
Oligarchy.
An oligarchy,
Is
yeah.
it an oligarchy? Well, the short... I like saying the short version, but then I go on and on. Instead of it's sort of a reverse feudal system. Where in a feudal system, I'd pay taxes to Jack if he were my lord, and in turn, he would protect me. However, I'd also, I'd owe him taxes, I'd owe him food. Sometimes that would be part of the tax. I'd owe him soldiers if we went to war.
Yeah.
This sort of works in the opposite way, where I would...
Just say it, man. Come on. Who's gonna judge us?
Okay, so it works the other way. So instead of me paying taxes to Jack, Jack would just buy my family.
Yeah, I buy his family and add it to mine.
Yes. We would technically still have our own, last name and our own family, but it's sort of like a business transaction more than loyalty. So, if, Johnny over here comes by and he's like, hey, I know Jack bought you, but I like your fourth cousin, so I'm gonna buy him.
Yeah, and it's not even like, oh, I want to buy to marry him. It's like, no, he has great business acumen.
Yes.
I want his recipe for spaghetti, so I'm going to buy it. That sort of thing.
I'm just going to buy my own grandma, so she has to tell me the recipe. But, and it's not viewed as, slavery, because you're not technically owned by them. It's like every single person is their own corporation. Where, because corporations are people, too.
Apparently.
So... everybody gets bought and sold, and your value is based off of who you currently have underneath you.
Like a king would be a person with the most families bought under him and still retaining wealth.
Yes, and then, so if I were to spend my last money buying someone else, technically, this is where it's kind of confusing as to how well this would work, and I doubt it would work in reality, but... because the dwarves are sort of a foreign entity, because the players are humans, it sort of makes sense that it's hard to explain, because to a dwarf, the concept of paying your lord doesn't make sense.
Why would I pay my lord? Lord must prove to me.
Yes, so, there are all sorts of laws about you're not allowed to buy someone and then ask for that much money back. You have to... Because it's not taxes, if I bought out Jack, Jack would owe, he would own that money, but I would have sort of a intellectual value that would be higher than his.
Yes, but anything I sold would I have an agreement with him, I could split the profits 50-50 with him or something like that.
Or whatever. So, a favorable thing would be, hey, I'm gonna buy you, and I'm only gonna take 40%, I'm going to take 20%. You can't resist that. You'll be part of a bigger family. You'll have more resources available.
My protection. I specialize in, weapons, that sort of stuff like that.
And so it'd be like, ooh, well, that's a good deal, because I'd still mostly be making the same amount of money, but with his name I could bring in more customers. So it gets sort of complicated the more you think about it.
Yeah.
But basically everyone, to explain it in human terms, everyone is basically a slave to someone else, but it doesn't matter because everyone's a slave.
Yeah, among the dwarven societies. In fact, that was the other messed up thing in this setting. There are actual slaves.
Yes.
The sorcerers, because in like regular D&D, sorcerers are people with inner magic that they can do. So that's a huge commodity.
Yes. They're sort of like the shaman, and so the shaman, I'm just gonna say it now because it feels like the appropriate time. The reason the shaman have the ability to grow life and stuff, and why their teeth are messed up, is because sort of the reason a shaman sort of has to come from Oasis, or, you know, be trained by someone from Oasis, is because part of their, I guess, training or whatever to become a proper shaman involves ingesting a whole ton of arcane shards.
It's part of the walkabout.
Yes, so, you know, that really messes up your teeth, chewing on a chunk of rock.
Yeah.
So that sort of stays in their system for life after that.
They, like, ingest a bunch of it, go to a cave in Oasis, and just, like, meditate there, come out if they're still alive.
If not, they become one with the earth again, and all is fine.
Yeah. And they're a shaman now. Now they can, like, create it. But sorcerers...
They're similar, but they don't go through that process. So they still have regular magic.
Yeah, they're just born with it.
Yeah, so they don't need to, you know, meditate to get magic. They don't need to use shards. They're just regular magic.
It's just instant and powerful. And the dwarves and other people notice this and, like, we can make money off of this. Because I don't need to spend shards to get something done.
Yeah.
So they sort of become a slave class.
Yeah. Now, the downside to that is that because the sorcerers aren't allowed to, you know, go out and learn and stuff like that, is that they're kind of not as powerful as they once were. They're certainly better than everyone else, but they're slowly on the decline because, you know, you don't want to have too many, so you don't train more, you don't breed more. You know, maybe you get one or two, you know, sons or daughters, and maybe one of those is okay.
But like you teach them only one or two spells.
Yeah,
like you specialize them.
You know, this is Tammy. She can cut rock. That's it. She can just cut rock.
This is Tammy Cutrock,
Yes.
and this is Bill Pigfinder.
Yes. So they're very specialized, but if they have any sort of inborn, you know, innate magic, they're pretty much going to be caught and sold.
Yeah, I think we only have like one sorcerer actually fully written and fleshed out.
And he is independent.
Yeah. Should we talk about the Buzzardmen?
Sure, why not?
All
we
right.
talked about the Krilo, and their gist is that they're basically meth addicts.
Kinda. They're like a
Crack.
biker gang.
Yeah, they run around on their Gila monsters, punching people really hard.
Punching people, using shotguns, and they're very pale.
Yes.
Because they've used it so often, this is the effect on barbarians. They become pale.
Yes.
But there's another faction in the Wastes that were called the Buzzardmen.
Yes.
Like these small, sort of gangly people, kind of golem-like, who wear goggles and these huge, like, feathered cloaks.
Think like a sort of Native American chieftain headdress thing.
Except it covers everything.
Yeah. Maybe a plague doctor's mask sticking out. You know,
Yeah.
The highest ranking, but, you know, the chiefs have, like, actual buzzard skulls as their crown type thing.
Yeah, and the way they got to this sort of thing is that this group is mainly snipers. They cannot fight in melee. And they have, like, the longest range gun in the game so far called long guns.
Very creative. Again,
That's named by
It's colloquial.
Buzzardmen,
Yes.
so you know.
They're, like, they live out in canyons and stuff.
Kind of like the Jawas.
Yes, like the Jawas, or those dudes on the bikes from Mad Max Fury Road.
The Buzzardmen's deal is, besides being rather malnourished, thin, and gangly, they, since the gods disappeared, and a majority of, like, other sort of creatures disappeared, they began worshipping the biggest thing and most imposing thing they could find. Giant vultures.
And buzzards, of course.
Giant vultures and buzzards. And so, like, they worship, and the giant vultures are intelligent.
Yes.
And they took advantage of that. And worship does still give a little power to people. it does still enhance.
Yes. So there's a huge big named buzzard, which is sort of like the Zeus of the area. But the sorcerer is what's his name?
The one with the sky.
Yes, the one with the sky, and
There are two, like, so far I have two big guys run for the buzzard men, because the buzzard men are very specialized and just shoot people long distance, and then pick that up later, pick over the scraps. And they have, like, wizards who enhance their eyesight. And they have two main specialists. One called the Great Claw, which is a giant buzzardman, like he was a physical giant, with the longest of long guns.
The sort of thing where you need 2 or 3 people holding it up.
Yeah, so he's their specialist in shooting. And the other one is the one with the sky, who is a sorcerer who joined with the buzzardmen.
Yeah, better be a crazy man out in the wilderness than to be a slave to a dwarf. Because let's be honest, the dwarves with their resources are going to buy most slaves.
Yeah.
Especially since to them there's no issue.
Definitely. And he worships under the vultures. He's not their slave, he just works with them.
Mm-hmm.
And his shtick is that he's blind.
Yeah.
But he's so magically in tune through his own self-training that he can essentially just see the world as is regardless.
Yeah. It's like, sort of like in things like Batman Arkham Asylum, or any sort of game like that, where there's a mode where you can sort of see important things, and sort of a mixture of Daredevil, but with magic instead of sound.
Yeah, he's on that sort of level.
Speaking of, it's actually funny, in the game in Nicaragua, the banker in the starting town was named after me for some reason.
Yeah, the dwarven banker. I was just like, what do I call him? I'm going to call him Zacharias.
Yeah.
Zacharias and Zach's actual last name.
Yes. Totally not me, though. Definitely not.
Yeah. They didn't get to that town, though. Darn
Such a shame.
Should we talk about the other sort of villains in the setting?
Well, we've been running for about 49 minutes, so I think we have time before we hit the hour mark.
Okay,
And Jack knows more about this section than I do. I've been working on lore and some sort of fluff text, with a little bit of rebalancing. I haven't actually done a lot of the actual, fighting specific people. But
The other sort of villain in this setting, one I ripped the sort of concept directly from Dark Sun. And that's called, the Defiler.
Yes.
They're the opposite of shamans. If there's life, they suck it out. They suck the magic out of the earth, and they make it hollow and weak. That's what they do. Because it's just power. It's the easy way, kind of like, dark side, light side sort of shit like that.
Yeah. So there's the Defiler.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's like a name, but he has apprentices and stuff, so it's not like he's the only one who does it.
Yeah. He tries to teach it to others, but he, wouldn't teach the whole thing because they would rise against him, probably.
Sort of like, like a light version.
Yeah.
The free trial of evil.
But he does have, sort of specialized apprentices, acolytes, which are essentially corrupted shaman called carrion shaman. They worship, things of death, mainly mushrooms.
Yeah, so instead of growing, plant, grass and, blooming trees and stuff, mushrooms would sprout up, maggots would well out of the ground.
Yeah, that sort of messed up stuff, and they follow under him because he is the ultimate entropy.
Yeah.
To them, he is the end, and worship and all that sort of jazz. And I think that the carrion shamans could actually make a pretty interesting sort of fight. It's almost pure magic against these guys with guns.
Well...
And maybe other shamans.
Well, yes. So that's sort of the main big bad evil guy.
Yeah, he's the guy always in the background.
Yeah. It's sort of like the Dr. Claw.
Actually, more sort of like the White Walkers.
Oh, I guess.
He's gonna get to you eventually, just give him time.
Give me 6 seasons and a prequel.
I'm coming for you.
Maybe I'll show up. But, so, that guy, he has this big bad evil plot, which basically involves Oasis, but since we're not going to go super deep into that, I figure we want to save that little plot line for later.
Yeah. He's not an elf.
He's not an elf. No.
That's key. Like, he's not an elf, he's not a lich, he's a normal, like, wizard. Not a sorcerer, even. He's just has the juice.
The juice. The juice is loose.
The juice and the knowledge to do it, so he just bulldozing through everything in front of him.
Yeah. So, that's fun. You know,
Yeah.
good old-fashioned corruption story. Good versus evil.
Yeah,
Light
survival
versus
in the West and all that jazz.
It's a... You know, there's a couple cliches in here, but I like it. They all come together nicely.
Yeah, I mean, like, cliches are not necessarily bad.
Oh, no, of course not. People do them because they're good.
Mm-hmm.
And then they use them too much, and then they become bad. Then someone does it, like, ironically a couple years later, and now it's in style again.
Yeah,
So...
doing that ironically, you're still doing it.
You ever read that Beowulf story? It's just cliche after cliche.
Oh, man, I don't think I've ever wanted to choke someone out more than hearing someone say that.
The sad thing is I actually have heard people say things like that about that, and like Shakespeare and stuff. It's like, dude, that's because it was good enough at the time that people copied it.
It's still good. I still say Beowulf holds up.
Beowulf.
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 All
You
right.
ain't there, Beowulf.
Hi, Beowulf. I love you.
My name is the love interest. My name is Sven. Hello, Beowulf.
Beowulf and
Yeah.
Herring Hole. No, wait, it's Hrothgar.
Hrothgar.
Oh, Hrothgar.
Hi, Hrothgar.
Hi, Hrothgar.
With the Nords and the shouting.
Now you see, my friend, when I speak in a southern accent, it is the exact opposite of your Swedesian drawl.
Swedesian? Don't you mean Swedish?
Nope.
Swedesian. That sounds like... Honestly, that sounds like the sort of, knockoff brand you'd see in a D&D game to let you know, yes, these are the Vikings. The Swedesians. Like, what is it? Mountain Blade. The Swadians.
Swadi.
I think that's not even the only place that's used... Hello, Chip. I think that's not even the only place that they've used Swadia. I think that was in a book I read once, but, I read too many, so...
Swedesia.
Swedesia.
The mightiest of planets.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's sort of a short version of the lore. An
All right.
abridged version.
Excellent.
There's,
So, hope you like the game.
Yeah. We'll be working on this. This was also the test of my new microphone. So, hope your ears enjoyed this. And sorry about the dogs barking.
We shall test the oral scape.
Oral scape? Wait, is that oral or oral? Like with an O or an AU?
I don't know, really. I'm quoting somebody.
I'm gonna go ahead and assume that it's the O, but you never know.
Yeah.
So anyway, enjoy the rest of your day, whoever you are.
Random person on Reddit.
Reddit, YouTube,
4chan. Goodbye.
Tumblr, I guess, maybe?
No.
Oh. Okay. Okay, Facebook?
Yeah, okay, fine, I guess. Socialist.
The totally still relevant funny junk?
Always relevant.
I'll post this on Dig, put it on my MySpace page. I'll have this audio loop as soon as you load the page.
Because I'm some kind of a jackass.
Yeah, no, I'm cool. I'm hip. I'm with it.
I'm with the
I know
times.
what the kids like these days.
I have a tiny dog. Kids like tiny dogs.
Yeah, man. Tiny dog with no collar because it keeps making noise.
Alright, goodbye.
A goodbye from Swedesia.